Transformation is a part of life. From the moment we are born, we are changing from every experience. This too rings true for groups, cultures, and nations, as circumstances and people around and within them turn over. The honorable and the stalwart can descend into the duplicitous and villainous. The brutal and the uncaring can become protectors and guardians. Life is complex, and so are the people in it. And the best fiction is that which touches on this part of the living experience. This is without question, you could say ironically. The book of the same name is the primary subject for this overview, and it explores a story that is very much at the heart of the Hinterlands narrative, and is very much the most significant clan story of the Ill Clan era. So, in this video I will be discussing the book, from its premise, to its characters, to even some of its events. There will be a clear notification of when spoilers are discussed, and when they are not. So fear not if you should be worried about being spoiled. But, without any further delay, let us begin to dive into this novel, the latest release for Battletech by Catalyst Game Labs, without question. Before we get started, I was provided a copy of this book for review by Catalyst Game Labs. The only thing they asked of me was that I review the book, for good or for ill. I have, as is my usual policy, donated its approximate value to the BCSPCA, and shared this on my channel's Discord. I always hate to mention when I give things like this to a cause, as I feel that this is a very private matter. However, in the instance of receiving a product like this, that I have not paid for, it's important to let you, the audience, know my procedure for handling it. I am accountable to channel members first and foremost, and I always remember that when dealing with things like product reviews or videos about them. Thank you all, and let us continue to the video. So, I suppose after the introduction, I should actually go over what Without Question is. This particular piece is a 339-page novel written by Brian Young for Catalyst Game Labs. This isn't Brian's first novel for Battletech, as he did write the prequel to this book. He's also written a number of short stories, as well as several novellas. Giving Up the Ghost, another book I reviewed on the channel, is one of his novellas about a splinter of the Kellhounds, along with Honor's Gauntlet, another Jade Falcon piece, which this is somewhat of a continuation of as well. He also created Foxtales. To get back to this particular story though, the one covered here, it happens during the Ill Clan era, the current time period as of the making of this review, and it mostly focuses on the remnants of Clan Jade Falcon. This is a direct sequel more than anything to A Question of Survival, a novel about the Clan Jade Falcon remnant gambling everything it had left in a desperate bid for survival. Now that the Falcons have persevered through their first trial by fire, this new entry in the series is about throwing them into the chaos and bedlam of the Hinterlands, while also reconciling their past. Their truthfully dark past, which they will have to move beyond in order to fly once again. Without Question, as mentioned prior, is around 340 pages, which is pretty sizable for a Battletech novel, and it definitely feels like there is that much story crammed into it. Everything from private character moments through to epic battles lay within its pages. Overall, I was happy with the writing quality on the early copy I received. The primary characters each are given perspectives per chapter. There are a total of 4 major sections the book is broken up into, which are further broken down into a total of 39 chapters, along with an epilogue. So, before I delve into the spoiler-free review proper, I wanted to do a one-over of who the main perspective characters are. The new Khan of Clan Jade Falcon and the man who ended up winning the primary conflict in A Question of Survival. Jiyi Chistu is the charismatic, fast-thinking, honorably flexible leader of Clan Jade Falcon during these trying times. Were it not for him, quite literally Clan Jade Falcon and the Hinterlands would be entirely dead or defunct, and all that would remain would be one of his rivals, the Alina Mercantile League, who certainly do not associate themselves as being true successors of Clan Jade Falcon. In essence, Jiyi Chistu will do whatever he has to do to ensure the survival of Clan Jade Falcon, but his approach is fundamentally different from most of the prior leaders of the clan. From the strong to the ruthless, or even the bloodthirsty, these previous Khans often were poor at compromise, whereas Jiyi seems to be a master of it, always striking deals that inevitably work out in his favor, but don't isolate those he struck the bargain with. His approach to politics and warfare have done him many favors, prior to the newest story, but it's still not perfect and there are flaws in his approach all the same. Speaking of which, this is truthfully his narrative more than anyone else's, and I'd say he is the main protagonist. It's a story about Jiyi trying to push against the forces all around him. Malvina Hazen created many enemies in the past, and the reputation of the Falcons reflect this. There are a great number of ghosts he needs to confront as well, ones which linger because of the dark history of the Falcons. The position of Khan is a heavy one, especially for a clan in such a weakened position, and for a leader who must deal with a frankly shameful legacy. His arc inside of all of this was incredibly fulfilling to see unfold. And not only would I say Khan Jiyi Chistu is a sly, almost slimy clan car salesman, he's a surprisingly moral and determined person as well. He's my favorite character in the story, and has been a definite standout since his first appearance in A Question of Survival. Another character introduced in A Question of Survival, Star Captain Dawn, is one of the most trusted lieutenants of Khan Jiyi Chistu, and is one of the major perspective characters in the book. Dawn's story isn't that of a traditional, highly skilled clan warrior. In the previous entry, Chistu was scraping the bottom of the barrel for anyone who could be turned into a Mechwarrior. Being a failed one herself, having lost her trial of position prior to Malvina's mad push for Terra, Dawn was allowed to retest under Khan Chistu, where she would prove herself worthy of being in the role of a Mechwarrior, and participated in the desperate battle against Clan Ghostbear during A Question of Survival. Now in this book, she is one of Jiyi's inner circle. Dawn would walk into hell next to her Khan, and has continued to grow as a person, and her growth continues throughout the book. She and Jiyi actually share what is probably my favorite moment in the entire book, which is in the third part of the story. But so much of that is because of who she is as a person by this time. Responsible, loyal, prideful, but another word I would use to describe her is tenacious, as she scraped her way up from a doomed fate within Clan Jade Falcon as it had been before. This all describes who Dawn is, to me. She embodies much of what Clan Jade Falcon is now, in this new era of rebirth. A former Ghostbear cadet and freeborn, and now a junior officer in the Jade Falcons, Alexis seems poised for great things, though this doesn't mean there won't be issues for her along the way. Her star is comprised of former Ghostbears like herself, transplants from her original Sibco no less, and form the foundation of support around her. Alexis brings youth and energy to the story overall, as she's forced to participate in some hard lessons learned for herself, and hard lessons learned by others. So much for character ties into the story beats of this particular book as well, so it's hard to go over everything she is, and was, beyond saying she's a determined person, trying to make her way through the lifestyle that she has fallen into. Honestly, it may be hard to say that Teresa is a main character as the others listed here, but it would do this part of the video a disservice to not mention her. The freeborn Star Colonel is one of the few officers who could not join Malvina, and later joined Chistu's forces. I can't go into much details about her character here, beyond saying that as a senior leader, she is vital to the Jade Falcons in their time of need. But more than that, her own journey is one of learning, growth, and painful sacrifice. She is a guide, a teacher to others, and a leader. There are two more perspective characters, representing the Lone Wolves as well as the Tomcats. However, it'd be hard to say that they are main characters of focus in the story, but they do have their roles to play. I just don't intend to focus much on them here, when the Falcons are really the center stage of the book. They are fun characters themselves, I just wanted to make sure I mentioned them in this section before we moved on to the non-spoiler review. This review was incredibly difficult to talk about without extensive spoilers, if I'm honest with all of you. There is a ton that happened in the book. Characters evolve and change throughout, and bear the scars, mentally and sometimes physically, for what those changes represent. Jiyi Chistu's the main character, and the struggles are his, but they are a shared burden with his close confidants, his cadre of loyal warriors. One thing I really have to stress, as it wasn't nearly as present in A Question of Survival, is that Malvina's very much felt here in a much more meaningful way. The atmosphere and tone are far more interlinked with what she'd really done, not just to her enemies, for which there are an endless number seemingly, but also what she did to the people that the Jade Falcons kept in their lower classes, and even what she did to the warriors of the clan themselves, either harming them or debasing them. The Jade Falcons were always brutal, but Malvina and her closest cohorts and disciples were on a level far beyond this. Their cruelty, their barbarism, is something that even the smoke jaguars of the 31st century would have recoiled at by and large. This is something that very much has to be tackled by the characters in the book. Its presence is felt by every single one of the main cast of characters, and there is a price to be paid for it, and every single one of them does in their own way. While yes, this is a book of survival against outward attacks and from within, to me it is more about the character journeys in the book that go beyond just the need to live another day. I think the real key struggle is the Falcons, led by Jiyi, are trying their best to survive not only what they are experiencing in the now, but getting past what they've done, where they've been as a culture and a clan, living through the echoes of violence and malice that their clan had become under Malvina. I felt Jiyi's story was one that was told best overall, as he's the one captaining this badly damaged ship through the Hinterlands. As trouble descends from space seemingly at every part of the story, the chaos that is now surrounding the Falcons and threatening to overwhelm them can only be navigated by the agile warrior at the center of it all. Civil distress, enemy incursions, internal plots, all of these would destroy a more traditional Jade Falcon warrior in tandem because of their rigid doctrines and traditionalism. I can see all of the side avenues he's forced to take, all of the compromises he has to accept, some of them for good, others at the expense of his credibility, in order to keep the clan that created him alive. Overall, he's got one of my favorite arcs of a clan character that I can think of. As many will know, in general, I don't typically enjoy clan characters. I find a lot of them to be two-dimensional, or restrained by wants that really just don't mesh with me. But with Jiyi, his goals and ideas are very much more human. And by extension, this grows and changes the other Falcons. There is a quote from within the book that I think encompasses so much of this journey. Jiyi Chistu's transformation of the Jade Falcons had transformed her, and over the past year, she had never really stopped before to think about exactly how much. It's great to see all the characters in the story, characters that had no future, or really no hope within the Falcons prior to their shattering, rising to the occasion, even if at a cost. When I read novels for Battletech, I tend to look towards the characters being interesting and engaging more than anything else. The broad plots will often be found within sourcebooks, and the battles and campaigns will be more thoroughly explained there as well. What sells the fiction to me personally is following the characters on their journey through the world of Battletech. I think the character work in this book is to a very high level. That's what makes this story compelling. Jiyi, Dawn, Alexis, Teresa, Hasara, and even Nikita all have their moments of understanding, ambition, second thoughts, insight, and growth. This very much felt like one of the most complete clan stories I can think of in this respect. Before this, I had mentioned how A Question of Survival was my favorite clan novel that had been released, even including the classics. I mentioned in this review as to why this is the case, with most clan characters never really clicking for me. Just to be clear though, that doesn't mean every element of these characters landed with me all the time, of course. I felt there were moments with Alexis that were a bit out of place, but overall her character was still fun and engaging, for instance. And the same is true with others. I never look towards perfection in a story, just if I'm overall satisfied and engaged. Without Question continues down the same road that was laid out in A Question of Survival, but I'll be blunt, this is now my favorite clan novel I've read to date. As mentioned prior, as a whole the story was fun. The characters and their experiences and their growth is spectacular. Secondary characters feel fleshed out. The primary characters are textured as well as layered. There's depth there, and the struggles they go through feel authentic. Once more, not one of the main cast is not changed by the journey into this book. In the realm of characters, this book engaged me throughout almost the entire story. I've liked Jade Falcon for various reasons for years. Hell, I even thought Malvina was okay as far as ruthless monsters were concerned. After all, she is a nice lady. But A Question of Survival and now Without Question really made me a Jade Falcon fan. In terms of the Ill Clan era, this is the best clan fiction there is. They are the only clan I've really connected with during this period on any level. So needless to say, I give this novel a strong recommendation because of the character building and most of the plot. Combat is something a lot of people crave in their Battletech stories, and that's kind of what I least rank a Battletech book on. However, in the realm of depicted battles, I thought it was fine. The real strength of this book, however, is its plot and characters, which are very well done. Before getting into the spoilers, I will leave you with this quote. This must have been difficult. Difficult, Malthus said, the venom in her voice enough to lay out a man twice Jiyi's size. But he did not flinch. Difficult does not begin to describe it. And now you're telling me that we have made it home. Our Chinggis Khan is dead. We have lost Terra. And you, a no one, is Khan of our once great clan? Jiyi smiled. I wish I had better news. It is not how I wanted things to go either. Long live the Jade Falcons. Selah. The spoilers begin here. First of all, I want to say I'm not going to spoil everything. I don't really see the point in doing that in a review. This gives me the ability to talk about some of the higher points in the story that would ruin things for people. And I want to give everyone fair warning before I do that. So, there's going to be like 20 seconds after I finish talking of blank noise. That is me giving you the chance to leave this video if you do not want spoilers. First making her appearance in Honor's Gauntlet, Star Colonel Nikita Malthus is, in a word, poison. One of the last major living supporters of Malvina Hazen's twisted vision of the world, the Star Colonel is a broken and damaged human mind, wrapped in malice, cruelty, and ambition. Perhaps the worst human being to be presented in the story, she is still a character who shows a glimmer of insight, as well as even showing grief in a sense, while also still being manipulative and vicious. Every bit Malvina's successor in this book, The Star Colonel is very much the center of the story after her appearance. There are a multitude of problems to deal with, and even other antagonists within the story, but Nikita is perhaps the purest nemesis to appear. A character introduced from No Substitute for Victory, and who features in Tomorrow Rising. Hasara too has his role to play in all of this. Once more, to explore his character more thoroughly would dip into spoilers. But he has a prominent role to play after his introduction, surviving the worst odds prior to even coming back to the Jade Falcons. He is an old warrior, and someone who at first seems to be almost a broken man, but his destiny is much greater, despite the hardships still pending for him to face, just as the rest of the clan. Greetings, Jiyi Chistu. I send my compliments. You have survived much longer than I would have expected without the support of the Alina Mercantile League and other players in our little corner of the inner sphere. I even heard about that stunt you pulled on Quarel. Bold of you. My compliments are not all I send. I present you a gift, as it no longer has any use to me. And this is almost as hard to do as the non-spoiler review. It's a 340-page book, and there's just tons jammed into it for all the characters. A big part of this book is the evolution of the Falcons, that comes from the top as Jiyi gives out orders and arranges his council and the Tumen to his ideological lens, a lens that is often shifting based on necessity around him throughout the book. It opens even with him dealing with his advisors as they try to resolve a manpower issue in the technician caste, as well as how they strategize to persist and thrive in the chaos of the Hinterlands. They receive a wave of refugees that are both a blessing and a curse. It's the answer to their manpower problems even. But spies and malcontents exist within the many thousands sent to them, who were, to be clear, offloaded by the AML. The wave of people included normal civilians, and even some leftover Jade Falcon warriors too. It is a boon, seemingly, but the Merchant Queen is no friend, and the Falcons realize before these people even land on Sudaden that she is likely intending on sending them a poisoned chalice. Despite her false flattery and backhanded comments, as a part of her recorded message to them. Prior to the arrival, as a background element, the Tumen is integrating the Ghost Bear cadets they'd taken in a question of survival. And there is a Star Colonel who has even been picked up by the clan as well, another boost for a struggling military organization that is now in desperate straits, with underqualified or inexperienced officers filling many of its ranks. We also get the arrival of the Lone Wolves at the same time as the refugees, a mercenary unit that is seeking safe harbor, and even perhaps employment. Chistu doesn't outright reject them, offering them safety on Sudaden, but also refuses, understandably, to hire mercenaries. Even he won't break that clan code. He treats them fairly and honestly, which builds credibility up between himself and the mercenaries, something which will be important later. We're introduced to Bugsy, the leader of the Lone Wolves, as a prospective character, and he's a fun read as well as he's sorting out how to manage his dysfunctional mercenary co-op, as well as trying to get the best possible deals out of the Falcons. But things take an unfortunate turn from here, because the Hell's Horses, one of Malvina's many enemies, have decided that they'd rather not have Clan Jade Falcon recover, and would instead like to strangle them to death. When they arrive in system, they don't immediately answer hails, despite messages being sent from the planet towards the flotilla of angry horses. Approaching Hell's Horses. I presume my previous message did not find its way to your ears. This is Jiyi Chistu of Clan Jade Falcon. I say again, welcome to Sudaden. I understand that you are a careful and respected clan, and I look forward to your visit. If there's something specific you desire, I await your patrol for an honorable trial, and will ready landing fields to allow you Safcon. Otherwise, how can I make your stay with the Jade Falcons comfortable?
Nig con Chistu. We do not bother with patrols, with the dregs of dead clans.
The Battle of Sudaden is covered here, much as it was in Tamar Rising, and as it was in Elements of Treason Honor. Each one of these books gives a different perspective and understanding of this conflict, with Tamar Rising being the top-down view of it. I'm just going to add, while I didn't enjoy Elements of Treason Honor, the best part of that book is the Battle of Sudaden, and if you have that book, as well as this one, you can get the very much on-the-ground, full picture of the battle between the two clans, as the Falcons desperately struggle to not be snuffed out. The events are touch and go, through deception, tenacity, sacrifice, and the help of the Lone Wolves, who throw their lot in with the Falcons as the horses treat them aggressively from the onset. Jiyi Chistu and his Falcons scrape past this functional trial of annihilation, but it is particularly trying for Star Commander Alexis, who, in the battle, loses one of her Sibco, changing the dynamic she and her friends had since they were introduced in A Question of Survival. But it also shatters her illusions that somehow all of her friends would always make it through. Life as a warrior means a life of losing friends and lovers prematurely, and it's a harsh lesson, but all clan warriors experience it. This is a part of her development through the rest of the story, as she's reminded of her friend's death. She is forced to, by circumstance, recommend another character, a powerful person in the clan, walk away from and condemn their own companion. The assault by the Hell's Horses, even after it is turned away, leaves the Falcons once more to pick up the pieces. The things Jiyi were working towards are still within reach, and the battle provided a sense of purpose and unity amongst his soldiers who he led to victory. But the costs are steep, and the acts of rebellion from the civilian populace, spies, and other outsiders start to come into play, at one point nearly killing the Khan himself. Still, Star Colonel Teresa becomes Saw Khan Teresa Rook, the founder of a new bloodhouse within the Jade Falcons. Her arc picks up from here, as she is tasked with retaking several worlds nearby to provide resources and a buffer zone against other hinterland powers. On the world of Antares, a terrible moral and political choice has to be made after a successful victory over the Tomcats mercenary unit. Alexis becomes one of her trusted officers after the Battle of Sudaden, but more importantly, the two forge a bond, which leads to what I think is one of the best scenes in the book. That is namely, where the two sneak into a local coffee shop on the contested planet, and where Alexis shows that her upbringing has real value. I love this because it includes Alexis's origins in a meaningful way. This then spirals into a chain of events, where Teresa Rook is left with a terrible choice. What does it mean to be loyal? Who are you loyal to? What ideals do you hold? What does justice look like? While perhaps many would immediately judge her situation, it is a tragic one, and is one of the ones with the greatest lingering elements to it. Alternatively, my favorite plot in the entire book is Jiyi Chistu's confrontation on Sudaden, not with the Hell's Horses, but with the past. Dawn and Jiyi are the two who experience not only the insurgency on the planet the most, in a series of scenes dealing with snipers and bombings, but they have to deal with the return of an assembly of warriors, led by a blood-named officer from Malvina's Jade Falcons, Star Colonel Nikita Malthus. Things are tense upon her return, and after her examination of events, but it accelerates as she makes her move to replace the man she sees as an insult to Malvina's legacy. Not only does Nikita openly mourn Malvina, wearing a black armband to represent mourning of the previous Khan, which is beyond comical given Malvina's demeanor and her approach to life, but it also shows just how fanatical and gone Nikita is. On the road to the trial Nikita demands with Jiyi, there is a line I think that plays into what he has been feeling and experiencing since becoming Khan, since trying to repair the damage and desolation left behind by the monster who not only disgraced the Jade Falcons, but ruined them. She consumed everyone and everything around her for her own ambitions and ego, but she let the Falcons off their leash too. In a way, this shows that Nikita and her ilk, they are not Malvina. They are Jade Falcons. Ones who are off the path. Dawn had quickly spotted him and followed him. She heard the message Nikita Malthus had been broadcasting, and sensed the Khan would feel unable to back down. "You owe her nothing," she said, surprised by how forthright and forward she was with the Khan. But he treated her like a valuable part of his team, and in her weeks and months in charge of the garrison, he thanked her for her candor and encouraged her to speak her mind, no matter how difficult or challenging it was. "I owe her repudiation. She is not Malvina Hazen. There's so much more you do not know, Star Captain." Outside the door to the locker room, the Khan stopped and turned to Dawn, his eyes fierce with determination. "But I will say this. She stands for every evil thing Malvina Hazen stood for. She is as much a metaphor from the Mongol way of life as Malvina was, and a representation of the barbarity we have tried so hard to overcome. I am told she is already rallying some to her cause. They are destroying our souls as well as our home, and I will not stand for it. She is marching in a Jade Hawk that outweighs Emerald by 20 tons. She is flanked by 2 Shrikes, which are even more dangerous. You will never stand against them if you go alone. Then come with me." There is so much more to this story. The inner workings of the Lone Wolves, the deals Jiyi and Teresa strike, the explosive outcome of various events in the story. I won't be divulging it all here because I think this story deserves to be read, more than just being heard about in a YouTube video. But, as you can guess from my normal review, and the spoiler review, I think this was a great story, and it is as much a redemption story as it is a story of triumph and rebirth. To me, this solidified that it is Jiyi Chistu and his Jade Falcons that are the true inheritors to the title of their clan. There's a reason I enjoyed this novel more than any other clan novels I've read, including A Question of Survival. It is worth reading, without question. I sign this treaty as a leader of the Jade Falcons, and open the door on a new era of the clans. Sakon Teresa Rook, Antares, June 10th, 3152. Thank you all for joining me here today. It has been a while since I've done a novel review, and it was a real pleasure to cover this one. I'll be painting up some Jade Falcons as an Ilkhan force after my Kickstarter materials arrive. I hope everyone enjoyed the review, and I hope people who wanted the spoilers are still satisfied with the incomplete ones I had on display. Genuinely, it was a fantastic read, and if you want to read about the Jade Falcons striving to survive, all while redeeming themselves, this is the story for you. I'm going to have a link in the top pinned comment for those who are interested in it. Remember, this is just how I perceive the book, and if I enjoyed it or not. Some of you may not find this to your liking. Literature is subjective in this respect, but I personally loved it. My hat's off to Brian Young and the editors at CGL for delivering this one. It deserves praise. If you asked me 2 years ago if I thought Jade Falcon would be the only clan to get what amounts to a solid storyline in the Eel Clan era, at least so far, I'd have given you a weird look. But this is really it. Ghost Bear, Wolf, Hell's Horses, and all the others, in my opinion, are just being left behind, with these kinds of character-driven stories being delivered for the Falcons. If you enjoyed the video, you know what I'm going to say, don't forget to smash the like button. And if you are new here, don't forget to subscribe. I put out content as frequently as I can, and you won't want to miss it. Also, as per usual, I want to give a huge thank you to all of the YouTube channel members who helped make all of this possible. I literally couldn't do this without you guys, so thank you. This content is really only made possible because of viewers like you. I'm also going to give a thanks to Catalyst Game Labs for the advanced copy. Just by receiving one is no guarantee of a good review on my part. They are aware of that. So once again, a thank you to CGL for that. I will also add once more, the value of this book has been donated to the BCSPCA, something very special to me. However, now with all of that out of the way, what did you think of the review? Are you interested in Without Question? Are you looking to pick it up or skip it? Let me know in the comments section below, and I will catch you all there.